Traci Bunkers, and I'm going to show you how to mount rubber stamps onto wooden blocks. Since I sell rubber stamps, I commonly get questions on how to mount them. Some people like to mount their stamps temporarily on those clear acrylic rectangle pieces. I like to permanently mount mine on wood. For me, the way I work, it's easier that way. I like to just be able, when I'm working, to grab the stamp that I need, whether it's a letter or something else, and use it rather than having to put it onto a temporary mount and use it that way. So that's what I'm going to show you how to do. The supplies that you need are the rubber stamps, obviously. I'm going to mount alphabets today. The alphabet I'm mounting is Octinaz. This is one of the rubber stamp sheets that I sell, one of the alphabets. You also need wooden blocks. Be sure the blocks that you are using are the right size for the alphabet. And I've measured my alphabet, and they are just a hair under an inch, so I'm using 1-inch wooden blocks. And you also need double stick cushion. Now this serves two purposes. Not only is it adhesive on both sides, so that's what this brown paper is. You just peel that off to show the adhesive. It's adhesive on both sides, so it makes it easy to attach the rubber stamps to the wooden blocks. It also acts as a cushion, and that gives you a better print when you stamp, whether you're using the alphabets or something else. It's really important when you're using bigger stamps. It just helps you to be able to print the whole piece rather than just getting part of it printed. So I always like to use the cushion. You also need a stamp pad and some good scissors, some sharp scissors I should say. You might also need a craft knife and a steel ruler, and I always like to work with a cutting mat underneath my work just to protect the tabletop. So get those supplies and come back and you can see close up just how I do this. Now I like to do this row by row. You might find another method that works best for you, but I just cut out one whole row and I will do a row at a time. The reason I do that, if I were to cut out all of the letters and have them laying around, it's much easier for them to get lost. So I like to do it this way. So I cut out a row, and then I cut out each letter, and I'm cutting as close as I can, and I'm keeping my scissors perpendicular so that I'm not getting an angled cut. Now with this font, it's kind of a grungy font, so some of the letters have little grungy parts outside of it, so I want to be sure if the letters have that, I'm not cutting any of that off. Alright, so there's the A. You'll end up with little bits of rubber. You can either just throw those away or save those to maybe make some kind of abstract rubber stamp. So I'm just cutting across the whole row right now. Getting the extra bits out of the way. And I'm cutting down the other side. Alright, so now this will make it a lot easier. I just cut along the sides. Alright, so you can see the letters. They're cut pretty close to the edges. Now I'm going to attach them to the double stick cushion. Alright, so I'm just going to peel back about that much. Now you could also use your steel ruler and craft knife to cut off a strip, but I'm going to do that after I stick them down. Now you can stick them down any direction you want, that doesn't really matter. I usually do whatever will be the most efficient so that I'm not wasting any. I'm going to fold that back a little more and I'm going to put them down. Now you want to leave room in between to cut, so you don't want them too close together. Alright, so I've got the letters from one strip stuck down. Now I'm just going to cut, and you can either use your scissors or a craft knife. I'm going to fold that back a little more, give me a little more room to work. Now you can either cut as close as you can now or just cut down, and I'm going to just cut down. Now this is super sticky, so your scissors will kind of stick to it. I just use scissors because for me it's faster. Alright, so we've cut this part off. Now we're going to just fold that over so stuff doesn't get stuck on it. Set that aside. Now we are going to cut around this, around each letter. Now this is super sticky, so sometimes I keep some scrap paper nearby that I just stick the little bits onto. And I'm just cutting around the letters where I've already cut out. So basically I'm just cutting right up to the rubber. Sometimes you have to stop and pull the stuff off your scissors. Get it unstuck from your fingers. And again, you want to cut as close as you can, and you want the scissors to be perpendicular, okay? So there's one letter. Now we'll move on to the next. I think I'm going to just cut straight across. It just makes it easier, I think, because then you just have to cut on the sides. All right. Another reason you want to cut as close as you can, in case your letters are just a tiny bit smaller than your blocks, this helps them not to hang over. Sometimes it can't be avoided. They hang over a little bit, but it'll still work all right. I've got those letters cut out. Now I am going to put them on the blocks. And what I like to do so that I know what the letters are when I've got them in a box is I stamp the top of the blocks. So I do that before I take the adhesive off of the other side. This, you can get your fingers a little dirty on this, but just clean them off. If you want to test it first, just test it on some paper. Alright. I don't worry about getting it straight, because when I stamp, this is just to show you what the letter is, and when I stamp anyway, I don't worry about that. At this point, you don't have to worry about getting them upside down, because you can just turn the block the other direction. And I usually stamp them, and then I put the letter by them so I don't get mixed up. Now I am going to attach them to the blocks. So I've got the letter A, I've got the block A. Make sure they are both facing the same direction, that they're not upside down. I'm going to flip that around 180 degrees, so I'm attaching this to the back. So just turn this over, use your fingernail to peel the adhesive off, and I try to center it in the block. Now once it's stuck down, you can't get it back off, so when you're sticking it, make sure you've got it where you want it. And then you can just get your piece of paper if you want and push down just to make sure that it's really stuck down. You want to give it a try. Woohoo! Cool. Alright, so now I'm going to do that with the rest of them. With some of the letters, it's very obvious which way they go. With some of them, you have to think about it. So with this B, I set them down the right direction so I knew which was top and which was bottom. So I'm going to flip this over. And remember that the stamps are backwards. So even though it looks like the B needs to go the other way, it doesn't. It needs to go this way. Get my paper back up here to help push it down. Now I will stamp it There. And there you go. So now I have already done one strip. Now I'll cover up my stamp pad. Move this stuff out of the way. And now I am ready to grab my rubber stamp sheet and do the next strip. Okay, I've gotten to the punctuation. Some of the punctuation is pretty straightforward on how to mount it. Like, for example, here is the exclamation mark, and so I just mounted that right in the middle. With some of the things that are so small, like the commas and the periods, you might not be sure where to put it. I like to put them where it most makes sense to me. So for like the commas, instead of centering it right in the middle of the block, I'll still center it this direction vertically, but I will put it down at the bottom where I will be using it. Now, sometimes it's hard to tell which is the top and which is the bottom, and that's when it's good to look at the printout that came with it. So looking at this, I can see that the comma needs to go at an angle. So I'm going to go ahead and stamp that right now and then mount it. So it needs to go at an angle. So I'm just going to hold it, mimicking the printout. And I'm going to stamp it right there, okay? Now that can also be used as an apostrophe, so just keep that in mind when you're stamping with it. And so now I'm going to mount it. Now you have to do it, remember you're doing a mirror image, so now when I'm mounting it, I will have it angled the other direction, see? And I'll do this little parentheses. Now with the parentheses, it can either be the beginning or ending, so I'm going to put it right in the middle. Now this is one that's just a hair bigger than the block. You can see that it stamped the edge of the rubber. Stuff like that doesn't really bother me when I'm stamping. If it does bother you, then you can cut that out closer with a craft knife or with scissors if you're really good at using scissors. Normally they don't come off that well. If they've been mounted for a while, they won't come off that easily. Okay, remember, they're mirror images when you're looking at them. So flip the block over. Alright, let's try stamping that. See if it looks any better. There! That fixed it. Okay, I've got my rubber stamps all mounted, and I like to keep mine in cigar boxes. So I've got it here, and I can put in some other blocks on the bottom to keep everything in their place. Now I like to put these little, I make these little spacers to go in between the blocks, and that just makes it easier to get them out. Otherwise, if they were right up next to each other, it'd be hard to reach in there. And so this is what they look like. Let me get one out. I just use the craft foam. So I just measure the size of my box, and this is about 3/4 of an inch tall. And I just put them in between, and it works really well for me. Now another thing I'd like to mention, I stamped the letters and numbers onto the blocks. Now if you don't want to do that, you could also just cut out the printout that came with rubber stamps and either glue or tape those onto the front of the block. That would keep you from having to stamp it on there. Another thing, some people like to put more than one stamp on a block just to save space. So on one block, you really could put something on each side of it. Now, personally, I like to just use one per block. It definitely takes up a lot more space, but for me, it's just much easier to look into my box and grab the letter that I need, but that's a personal preference. You can see it's pretty easy, really, to mount your own rubber stamp, so I hope that you'll give it a try. And I have all kinds of rubber stamps, alphabet stamps, and doodles, and passports, mail art, a lot of variety in both my online shop at tracibunkers.com and my Etsy shop. Not only do I have the rubber stamps, but I also have all the mounting supplies. So I've got the wooden blocks in different sizes, and I have the double stick cushion that I showed you how to use, and I also have a rubber stamp mounting foam, which takes the place of both the cushion and the blocks. So please check out my thing, see if there's anything you might like, and I hope this helped to take the fear off of mounting rubber stamps. It's really not that hard. Thank you. Bye.